All right, we'll start the pre-meeting for the West Jordan Planning Commission meeting, July 5th, 2022. We have all commissioners present with Commissioner Allen on Zoom. First thing I would like to mention is next meeting, Alan Anderson is going to come in and do a new program training for us. It's called Prime Gov. And so that will be our training for next time. Okay, we'll get started. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Any questions or comments? Okay. Next is a public hearing with the final action by the Planning Commission, the Dolphin Industrial Park Subdivision. 6099 West New Bingham Highway, preliminary subdivision plat with 3 lots on 28.86 acres, an M1 zone. And it looks like, is it Taylor? Why don't you introduce yourself to us too, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no. Perfect. Yeah, thanks. My name's Taylor Jensen. I am the new senior planner here in the city. Replaced Brian when he left. Been here since middle of May. Came from Eagle Mountain, where I've worked for about 7 years, and 2 years in the middle of that, I actually worked in Cache County for 17 of the 19 cities up there. So been around. I'm from Lehigh. So that's me. Really excited to be in West Jordan and to get to know you and work with you. As mentioned, Dolphin, it's a site plan and a major subdivision. It's 3 lots on just over 22 acres. It's located on an M1 zoned property. The goal here is to construct 2 large warehouse buildings. The first one being 187,000 square foot, and the second, which will be larger, is 261,000 square feet. And the third lot doesn't have a determination at this time, so we'll come back in the future when they know what they want to do with that. Happy to answer any questions.
No questions.
Great.
Okay. Next is the Eagle Eye Promotions, 4022 West, 8380 South, preliminary site plan and review of street facing bay doors, M1 zone. And it looks like Mark is up.
Yep, thanks. So this is just kind of a simple site plan going on the corner of 8380 South and 4000 West. So this is one of the kind of the last remaining or one of the last remaining lots in that industrial area just south of the soccer complex there. But basically this is just for a single warehouse building. Eagle Eye Promotions, they do mostly manufacturing of advertising materials, so banners and decals and things like that. So they'll be manufacturing those on site and then warehousing and distribution. But the main reason this is coming before the Planning Commission tonight is just because of some bay doors that are facing the road. And so by city code, those have to be approved by the Planning Commission. So we're kind of running the preliminary site plan and the bay doors along with that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
I have my usual one. When are we going to get rid of that requirement? That's my question. Is Calvin working on a new, is he bored yet? Does he need something else to work on?
No, Councilman Green is working on some of the other ordinances. However, per our current code, staff, council, or the commission can recommend any code changes, and we can.
I have recommended it several times.
Okay.
So what do I need to do to make it official?
Official.
Well, Larry and I will work on it as one of our next text amendments.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In addition to that, are there any other updates that you would recommend from the commission?
That's the only one that seems to be a bit, I don't say egregious, but just unreasonable.
So I don't know if I'm venturing into dangerous territory here, but so kick me if I'm doing that, Duncan. One of the things that we as staff talked about as a development team last week was undergrounding overhead utilities. Is that something that interests the commission?
Yeah,
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right.
Because that's another issue that comes up in the context of this
Of
application,
this,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that is one of your, it's in our city code that allows you as a planning commission to initiate text amendments. So,
Mhm.
so we can
When
bring
you-
both
when-
of those back to you.
When you say interest, are you interested in having that come before us, or just interested in let's getting the power lines under the ground?
Well,
Because I don't really care if it goes before us. I just want it.
it would have to come before you.
Sure.
I'm just curious, straw poll, if the commission generally supports the undergrounding of overhead utilities. You know, are there certain corridors that aesthetically mean more to the commission that we should focus on? There's a lot of different ways we could tackle this issue. So,
I think aesthetically, I'm all for undergrounding any of the utilities, all everywhere. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. I mean, my house, they are all underground, and when I turn on the news and see that some of the power outages and stuff, especially when we've had these high windstorms, my neighborhood seems not to be affected, and I think that's another positive right there. So I don't know what anybody else feels like on the commission.
I agree. I think that maybe Redwood would be a high priority just because there's a lot of traffic through there. Is there overhead utilities through Redwood? I don't know. I've never noticed.
there are a few, big sections have been undergrounded. There are, if it's important to the commission and in the council, there are certain exceptions currently in our code that have provided opportunity for developments to not bury overhead utilities. It all comes down to money. It's very expensive. And so if it is indeed a high priority for certain corridors, then we could talk about the financial impacts, and that's where the council definitely comes into play, because they control not only our code, but also the finances. So happy to do that. Well, maybe that's something we can put on the land use subcommittee for a week from today. That'd be if they're looking for things in this. We don't have Council Chair Whitelock on, but I can certainly have that conversation with her.
Maybe we could look at high visibility roads as well as narrow streets, because I know that our road, I'm on a dead end canal road, but it's pretty narrow between that and the canal. And I know that there's been several incidences where there's been cars that have crashed into those power lines or into those posts, and it has knocked out power for the entire neighborhood. So I think that on the narrower streets, we need those undergrounded as well.
Perhaps the last question, do you have a preference when it comes to industrial areas? Because a lot of the requested deviations or variances that the commission has seen over the years is in our industrial areas. Does that matter?
I would think some of the bigger warehouse areas where you've got a lot of truck traffic.
Putting preference on them.
Giving them an exception? No. Again, this is informal, right?
I think you can see some of these industrial areas where growth has overtaken them, all like along I-15, or if you go down I-15 in like Provo Orem area, there's an industrial area that was Orem's and now it's bleeding into Vineyard. And so there's these ugly industrial zones that are now in the heart of these beautiful growth zones. So I don't think that we can ever plan like this is always going to be industrial. There's never going to be anybody that's going to see ugly power poles around it. I personally think we should underground everything.
Okay, that's helpful.
Commissioner Wynn?
Since this has come up,
what determines now whether utilities go underground or above ground? Who's calling the shots? What rules are in force right now?
Well, I don't have the code in front of me, but we can pull that up.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously prepare some better 8-2-4, I guess is the code
I'd like to
section.
hear you recite that now, if I could, please.
Did memory.
With Mark whispering in my ear, that's apparently 8-2-4. And I think there are either in that section or in other places in the code, some exceptions like Scott was mentioning. And that's, I think, what we're dealing with, because the general rule is that we, at least with new development, we underground everything unless there's an applicable exception. In fact, there's a couple of different applications we've dealt with recently as city staff where it was clear that there were no exceptions. They had to underground, especially where the existing power lines would go right through the middle of certain lots, and but for the subdivision, there wouldn't be any need to underground and so forth, or move the lines. So I think what you'll end up dealing with is, as Scott mentioned, the exceptions when it comes to you want to recommend to the council to get rid of those exceptions. First and foremost, that's where we have the most ability is with new development. And if you lessen the exceptions, obviously with no money to the city, you're getting more undergrounded quicker. And as Scott mentioned, where the council really comes in, if it's beyond new development, we're trying to underground existing areas that are already developed, then that's a load of money. And then that's more of a council decision as to how much and when and how to prioritize that. And I think the council, though, even though you're not a funding body, right, but you could, in the process of recommending a code amendment, I'm sure the council would listen to you if you felt like a certain zones were a higher priority to fund if and when funding is available. So that's, I think, what maybe Scott was alluding to earlier, where you could be helpful as well. So is that kind of responsive to what you're looking for? Okay, so we'll bring back some ideas at one of our next meetings. I'll get with Larry.
Commissioner Quinny?
So my thought on that would be, one, as far as the prioritization, like I know 1300 is a big project right now. Two of them is we're expanding roads, right? It doesn't make sense to go tear up Redwood just to put the power lines down, but we have other projects we can do. On the other one, I would actually argue on the other side of the M1 zones, because West Jordan has kind of made its living by courting in industrial areas, right? So why would we start adding additional expense when we've kind of made that our bread and butter? I mean, the lines will be buried to certain points up to those zones, and if we develop them, the new developers can come in and bury those lines to make sure that it's, you know, more aesthetic, that it's safer, etc. Right? But I don't really care if the power lines are visible in an M1 zone. I don't drive through there on a regular basis. To me, it seems like an unnecessary expense for those guys. I would be in favor of leaving the exception.
And then you bring up a good point too, that in addition to new development, where the city does have kind of full control, so to speak, is the city's own projects. And if I remember correctly, when the Public Works building went in, which was our project, right, the city's building, then the city itself incurred the additional expense to underground those lines. And obviously, if we have rules for new development and we're part of new development, then we also follow those rules. So, and the thought I had as you were talking is maybe we ought to expand that, and maybe we have, I don't know, but when other governmental entities do work like UDOT or whatever, you know, should we try to include that in the project? Because that might be another opportunity if we haven't fully taken advantage of that. So, and a lot of times, I mean, UDOT won't eat the whole cost, but maybe if they've already got the road torn up to replace a street, maybe there's less of an expense to the city, and we get more bang for our buck if we're only paying 50 cents on the dollar compared to what we'd normally pay. So.
Any other comments? Thank you. And that is it for 15 minutes. We'll adjourn. You ready? It didn't work. All right, we'll start the West Jordan Planning Commission meeting, July 5th, 2022. And all 7 commissioners are present with Commissioner Allen on Zoom. We'll start with item number 1, and that's approval of the minutes from last meeting. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Quinney
I move that we approve the minutes as contained in the packet.
and Commissioner Hatch.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Hammond. Any opposed? Okay, carry 7-0. The voice from above. Next, public hearing with final action by the Planning Commission. And this is the Dolphin Industry Park Subdivision, 6099 West New Bingham Highway, preliminary subdivision plat with 3 lots on 28.86 acres M1 zone, and Dolphin Industries with industrial, Stephen Huey. Do you have anybody from, come on up. Just come up to the podium and push the button on the right side. And state your name, just in case I goofed. Right. Here you go.
Hi, I'm Stephen Huey. I'm here with Dolphin Industrial, and we're presenting our industrial park subdivision here, which is a 2-building complex. We're excited to hopefully build here in West Jordan. I'm willing to open it up to you guys if you have any additional questions on our plan, but look forward to hearing your feedback on our proposed subdivision.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay.
I have one.
Oh.
It's not relevant to the, just mostly curious. Do you guys have tenants for these buildings?
No, not yet.
Okay, I mean, not that industrial is not in high demand, just curious.
Yep, we're building on a speculative basis, so. Thank you.
Okay. Taylor?
Great, thank you, Chair. Just one item I want to touch on quick before we go on. In the staff report, we do have a recommendation for approval of both the site plan and the subdivision. So I know the agenda only showed the subdivision, but we actually have 2 motions recommended there, or 2 items. So moving on, oops, wrong way. So as mentioned, this is at 6099 West New Bingham Highway. It's on the west side of Mountain View Corridor. Current zone is light industry, M1. The future land use plan is light industrial. Their proposal fits well within both of those. Here we can see their preliminary subdivision plan. As mentioned, there's 3 total lots there showing warehouse units on lots 1 and 2. Lot 3 doesn't have a proposed use yet, so that'll be something that'll be determined in the future. They have provided a site plan. The smaller building 1 is up front. Mentioned during the pre-application or the pre-meeting that's about 170,000 square feet roughly. The larger one, which will be coming in later, after the first one, I should say, will be 260,000 roughly square feet. Provided elevations. We've looked at these. I feel like they do a nice job making it attractive for an industrial building. There's lots of articulation, different uses of materials and colors. So staff supports these elevations, and I feel like they comply with the code requirements there. And we are recommending approval with the conditions listed in the second page of the staff report.
Okay, do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Wynn?
In reading through the staff report, there was something in there about access to 90th South was dependent on UDOT. Do we know the status of that at this point?
I mentioned that over to the applicant. I haven't heard what the status of those talks are.
Scott Thorson with CIR, Civil Engineering, the civil engineer on the project. 90th South is UDOT road, their jurisdiction. So as part of this process, we need to submit to them to get an encroachment permit on that. So since we don't have the final approval from UDOT yet, the condition would be simply to follow that through and get the encroachment permit from UDOT.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this is noted as a public hearing, so if you would wish to speak on this, please come up to the podium, state your name. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak on this. And if you're on Zoom, just raise your hand. And then you'll have 3 minutes also. And seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back up to the commission for comment and or motions.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. Unless anyone has an issue with that.
I was curious, sorry. You mentioned there's 2 motions. How do we?
Yeah, it's on there.
So it's one motion for 2 items, I guess is the way it's
Thank you.
posted.
Thank you.
Okay, I move that the planning commission approve the preliminary major subdivision and preliminary site plan for Dolphin Industrial Prosperity Industrial Subdivision for 3 lots on approximately 28.22 acres located at 6099 West New Bingham Highway in the M1 zone, subject to the requirements of approval listed on the staff report.
Commissioner Clooney,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. I assume that was an aye. Alan?
Correct.
Okay, motion is approved, 7-0. Next on the agenda is the Eagle Eye Promotions, 4022 West, 8380 South, preliminary site plan and review of street facing bay doors, M1 zone. And it looks like Pastor Gold Ames and Weaver Incorporated is applicant. Jeff Close. Come on up.
I'm Jeffrey Close, architect, working for PJW and representing Eagle Eye Promotions. The project, like you indicated, is located on 8380 South off of 40th West. The site, the intention is here to develop a building about 20,000 square feet with parking and face onto 8380 South. The project itself is in an M1 zone, has been indicated, and has to the east, it has residential zone, to the north residential zone, and then not residential zone, industrial zone with a residence on it, excuse me. And to the south is M1 zone as well. The area is pretty much developed at this point. The lot up the street that looks like it's not developed, I believe, is developed at this point. So it's like one of the last developments in the site, with the exception of the property right adjacent to the west. So I apologize. Chris, I'm talking right now.
And they still.
All right.
I love that.
I am. Apologies. Chris, my boss, he's supposed to be here and he's delayed. So
Almost too late.
yeah, it's almost too late, isn't it? So the property will face onto 8380 South with, like I said, M1 zone all the way around except for to the east, which is residential. Property that's behind the building is an M1 zone with a non-conforming residence on it. The buildings in the area are 1- and 2-story buildings, and our building is a 1- and 2-story building. or I should say is a two-story building with one and two-story functions within it. The functions include their product production area, warehousing, offices. And we've got these doors that face onto 8380 South. And we've been working to screen those and provide the recommendations that we've been dealing with the planning department. We feel like it fits into the area nicely. If you look at the other buildings in the area, they're block or concrete tilled up buildings. This will be a nice anchor on the corner coming on 40th West. Nice looking, like I said, two-story building, painted with a nice band that runs around it and curtain wall on the front of the building. So I think it'll present itself quite nicely. It's a small site. One of the biggest challenges we've had is it's just over 1 acre. And doing that, providing the necessary size of the building for the client, as well as necessary parking, access to dock doors, and so forth, has been challenging. We feel like we've provided a plan that works well, trying to answer, requirements as best as we can. The owner has brought up one concern recently. They have a box trailer that they're trying to find a safe place to store it. And that concern presents some potential problems for screening the dock doors. So option 1 is on the west side of the building, and option 2 would be on the north side of the building, but that's where the landscape buffer is. So we're running into some difficulties there. They don't want their trailer stolen. It needs to be in a secure area. And so we're looking for a compromise there. And we could possibly provide, instead of trees along the side of the building, some sort of ornamental architectural feature. I don't know yet, but I present that to you in this meeting. The building, I think, will fit very nicely in the neighborhood. It'll be nicely landscaped, and there won't be any sod. It'll all be drip irrigation, and will, I think, present, like I said, very nicely off of 40th West.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Clean.
See, I just want to make sure I understand. So on the west side of the building where the doors are going to be, right now, we just have you screening it with trees.
That's
and
correct.
You're looking for an alternate solution to keep the facility safe. You're proposing like a fence, like a stone fence or
Well, I
something,
think at least we'd have a wall.
or some kind of wall, whatever, right?
That is not, well, I think typically we're only doing 6-foot walls, and I don't know if that's would be considered sufficient or not. We were proposed that it would, but we would need, some feedback on that from the planning commission.
Okay, so
Sorry,
question,
is
just there'll be questions that we can address with Mark. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what you're looking for, so we can make sure we address it and get direction from staff as far as what's approved in code.
Is this a trailer or the building you're looking to screen with the fence?
This is a trailer. This is a box trailer that
box
they need
trailer.
a secure area to store it. And what they're proposing is some gates that would be next to the building, next to the bay doors, that they could back into that space. And the problem is we needing space to back in there. That's going to take out a tree or two, probably 3 maybe. So we would need to look at something else there, and just needing some input on what would be appropriate, and for the planning commission.
Is staff aware of this?
No, this is actually the first we've heard of it.
So then maybe it would be better, this is just a suggestion, but if this site plan is not correct, maybe it'd be better if they went back, worked with staff with it, and then came back to us for approval.
I think we can work through this tonight, can't we? I at least try.
I just don't want to make an I don't know.
That's
A
fine.
split.
I think once we have Mark talk to us about it, we can ask him the questions about what changes we're allowed to recommend and make. within the context of our powers and authority, so that we don't have to make him go back and spend more time on this. I'd rather try to work this out tonight.
Yeah,
So
so
when
I guess,
it's Mark's turn, then we can go.
I guess the question I have for the applicant is this trailer going to be parked in that where the bay doors are, or is it just going to be stored there overnight, or how does that work?
We would be able to just store it either on the west side of the building.
Can you just come up to the lectern so we can make it?
Sorry,
Are you-
I don't want to speak out of turn, but
Well,
so
yeah.
I'm
introduce-
Mike Abraham.
Okay,
I'm the owner of Eagle Eye Promotions.
okay.
And we have a utility trailer that we would like to park either on the west side of the building or on the north side where the gate is at the top. Apparently that's there's a house there. So we had to jog our building 10 feet in, which we didn't want to do, but so that's all supposed to be landscaped up there. But if we could park a trailer on the north side of the building where the jog is on the building, that would be ideal. Or on the west side, would like to be able to go on the side of the building past the dock doors. So it would be between the fence and the building. But in order to do that, I guess we have to screen the doors. So we would have to take out a couple of trees to be able to park on the west side.
So,
Go ahead.
so these are my concerns, and this is why I'm suggesting it might be wise to take it back to staff. One, what does the code require for screening requirements? Two, what does the code require for landscape requirements? And three, is it going to take up any of the parking stalls, because the parking is also required by code? So there's three possible code violations that we could be violating if we continue down this path and working on it tonight. I just don't want to make a rash decision. And that's why I would rather do what staff wants to do.
Let's hear from staff first, and then we can kind of make those motions and decisions after.
Okay, so I'll just quickly go over my presentation, and I guess
Can I just say one thing? We don't think it'll impact any parking stalls. We are required to have 25. At this point, we have 29. And there's also some discussion from that probably staff will talk about entrance and backing in and bringing trucks in. So that impacts this discussion as well. Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, members of the Planning Commission. So the applicant's pretty much gone over the zoning and surrounding areas, so I won't go over those again, but I did want to correct one minor change in the staff report. So there's a few places in there that it mentions a 60-foot building setback on the north side from the property line that's adjacent to the single-family house there. That's actually supposed to be 20 feet. Reason being is that single-family house is actually in the same M1 zone as this project. So as such, it's only a 20-foot buffer instead of a 60-foot buffer. The only time we require a 60-foot setback is if that single-family home were in an R1 zone or a residential zone. So I hope that, just wanted to make that very clear. Anyway, yeah, so as the applicant explained, the bay doors are going to be set back from that front facade of the building about 38 feet. And so with that, it kind of has the effect of pushing that back a little bit. So as traffic comes in off of 4000 West and heading west, then it, with those bay doors back, they're not really visible until you get right in front of them. So they've done a good job in incorporating that into the architecture. As far as the screening from traffic heading east along 8380 South, they've, like they said, they're proposing a row of evergreen trees there to just kind of pretty much have the same effect, just going in the opposite direction. So, Other than that, the parking's looking good. They're required to have 25 parking spaces based on the use and the square footage. They're providing 29. So now Jeff mentioned that there might be a little bit of changes that have come up recently since the report was written with access and backing out of delivery vehicles on site. Basically, we just don't want those vehicles backing out into the road, creating a traffic hazard there. So there will be a little bit of a redesign there, just kind of widening that throat and that approach. But that's going to have to be worked out at the final review. So we still have quite a few reviews left to go. Anyway, these are some of the building elevations. Like you said, they're proposing a tilt-up concrete design, pretty similar to most of the warehouses we've seen in West Jordan. So they're staying pretty consistent with that. The columns on these were reviewed by the design review committee as well as the rest of the project. We've got some full height storefront windows that are acting as basically de facto columns that'll kind of break up those wall surfaces. And then they're also providing columns on the north side as well. This is just kind of a rendering, just showing some of the colors used and materials there. And then the landscaping, you can kind of see that row of trees there on the west side, some Bosnian pine evergreens running along that side. And then the rest of the landscaping, again, is mostly xeriscaping with no sod. And everything's water conserving and on drip irrigation systems. So with that, staff's recommending approval of the preliminary site plan and the bay doors facing the street.
Is staff still currently recommending approval with the trailer?
I guess that remains to be seen on where it's going to be placed. If it's going to be placed in the northeast corner, I would say no, because that area is a 20-foot landscaping buffer and should be used as a landscape buffer indefinitely. If it's being stored to the west, that would probably be more preferable, particularly if it's on that paved surface there where the docking area is. There is kind of a question for legal on whether that's going to constitute outdoor storage or not. If it does constitute outdoor storage, they're going to need to put in some solid masonry walls across there that face 8380 South, or a solid metal wall with solid metal gates. And there would be an additional conditional use permit involved with that. I guess the alternative interpretation could be that since this is kind of a designated parking area, they could be using it as such. But I guess that's a question for management and legal.
Yeah, I guess for me, that would turn on how long at a time is that trailer there? Is it being, if it's being used often enough, it could be considered to just be parking, especially if it was painted the size for the trailer and that was its designated space on asphalt parking and it moves fairly consistently. But if it's staying there for multiple days at a time, then my best interpretation of the definitions would be then it probably would require the walls and metal fences and that kind of thing. So I guess I'd need more information.
Commissioner Shelton.
I'm not sure if this is a question for the applicant or staff. So I guess we'll let whoever wants to take it. The northeast corner of the building has an additional cutout for the residential buffer, correct?
Are you referring to the gate or?
Sorry, yeah, well, that was the direction of my question. But
Yeah.
I guess, first of all, I wanted to confirm that the reason that jut is there is for the residential property that neighbors it.
It is, yeah. So that landscaping buffer, you can kind of see the property line north of there, just kind of bisecting the two properties. The one to the west is actually an outdoor storage yard, so they're not required to have a buffer there, but the residential property is.
Okay, then that leads me to my next question is why is that gate there?
So that gate is for fire access.
Thank you. Okay.
And we do have our fire marshal here too, in case there is a fire code related question.
Mark, can you just take it back one slide to the concept plan, please? No, one more. The one with the building. There we go. The renderings. That's what I was looking at. On that west side, is that going to be paved? Is that what you were referring to as also being paved west of the building there?
Yeah, so that area is proposed to be paved. We
So
just
all they're
need to
asking
make sure
is, can
it's
they just,
stored.
instead of having trees, can they put a wall there so that it can be safe, right? That's the short of what I'm understanding is.
Yeah, if we're considering this to not be outdoor storage and we're just treating it as a simple parking space, yeah, they can put a fence there and it could just be chain link if
Oh,
they wanted to.
And even if it is outdoor storage and we have to address that with a separate conditional use, that's going to have to come back to us for a final site plan anyway, right? So the reason why I'm asking is because we can get to the point today where we can follow your recommendation, submit an approval, so we can move forward with this, knowing that you're going to be able to address whatever conditional use permits we might need at the next phase, right?
Right, and just to be clear, that outdoor storage conditional use permit is an administrative conditional use permit, so that's reviewed at the.
Yeah, that's fine, but that will be handled and addressed so that we make sure everything's compliant before we get a final site plan approval, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not hanging this up for minutia.
And of course, the final approval is staff anyway, is what you're alluding to, as well as the administrative conditional use. So those wouldn't have to come back. Right.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Marchant?
Sorry, I know I'm being a problem on this, but Mr. Murray, what are the ramifications if we approved this site plan, if we approved this project today? What are the ramifications if we approve this without the adjustment made and written? I know that it'll be written into the minutes, but where they're just proposing and suggesting options of where they could potentially park the trailer. Nothing is on the site plan. Nothing is in the minutes. There's just options being proposed. We don't know. I mean, can we give them some more time to talk about whether or not this would be a storage purpose? And what are also the ramifications if we approve this and it does take up some of the landscaping spaces? That's setting a precedence for other developers to come in and then say, look, you did this for them. Why can't you do this for us?
Yeah, so I think the first part of your question is it a good idea to get additional information from them this evening, to which the answer is yes. And then based upon that, your options are to either have them come back with a more fleshed out plan, or B, give preliminary approval, knowing that all of the specifics have to be fleshed out before staff gives final approval. So there is, if you have confidence that staff will follow through on the direction you've given them, that's an option as well. So, but I think regardless, you ought to, ask for additional information on these questions from the applicants.
Commissioner Wynn?
How long is this box trailer, and is it just one, or are there multiple box trailers that you use for your products?
It's just one utility trailer. It's about 14 feet long, 7 feet wide, just a box trailer.
And is it out making deliveries most days, or is it sitting around the yard most days?
It's going all over the place all the time. I take it to my house sometimes. We take it up to customers. We just went to Oakley for the rodeo. So it's moving. It's not like a container where it's just going to be sitting there. So it's just when we leave it at the shop, we want to be able to secure it.
But it's at the shop. It's got to be at the shop a lot of the time anyway, doesn't it? So that you can load product on it.
Yeah, it's there a lot, but we're always going to customers. It's not like a storage.
It loads and moves.
What's that?
It loads and moves.
Yes.
So what would you envision for something to secure it with? What do you?
Just a gate chain link fence, just something. West Jordan's not the safest place. We've had stuff stolen out of our lot already where we're at now. So we just want it behind a fence just to kind of hide it a little. So that's it.
Our intention is that this area is a walled area with gates. So solid gates. So that's, you know, it would not be viewed, you know, as just being out in a yard. It's in an enclosed space.
Are you talking solid like masonry or?
Yeah, solid masonry wall with solid metal gates. Match the dumpster enclosure, exactly.
So the gate would be as you enter that loading area?
The gate would be back in line with the building where the bay doors are.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Quinney?
So as it looks like now, we're not requiring a wall. We just have the screening. And if he's offering to put a wall up, that effectively takes care of the screening over on that side, right? And we're not worried about any kind of conditional use permit because the applicant is saying that this is not a storage unit. It is simply just semi long-term parking, right? To me, it seems like the
Right.
wall is a sufficient solution that he's proposed here.
And in my legal opinion is at that point, it is definitely parking, especially if you're screening it with the walls and the gate. But that's not what currently is in the plan, obviously. But if the plan was updated, that would.
Sure. So we
That would
can
work.
provide additional instructions to Mark as he proceeds with this. And as Mark stated in his testimony earlier, it's so far recessed from the front of the building that you're not going to be able to see it until the very last minute anyway. I think this is a pretty sufficient solution.
If I may, and this may or may not be helpful. It's eyes in the, yeah, anyway. If, for example, the applicant did not throw the commission or staff this curveball tonight and the council or the commission approved this site plan as is, and later on, they approached us with this trailer challenge, likely we would just administratively review it per code, make sure it met code, and it would be a de minimis, non-significant change to what you see here. Putting up a wall and a screening, not a big deal. Now,
That was
do
very
have the-
helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you.
And it really does turn on that is if they're very small, as Scott mentioned, de minimis changes, it's easier for you to rely upon staff to flesh out the details, especially if you have very specific items in your approving motion. But where this is fundamentally different, it probably is better to have something in front of you that you're voting on that's a little closer, right? Where there's bigger changes as far as the wall and so forth. So, but again, you've got to just play it safe either way that the record is 100% clear what it is if you are going to give preliminary approval, your motion ought to include more than what's just on the standard motion here and make it very clear that before staff gives final approval, here are the things that we want to see in the plan, such and such a wall and gates and so forth. So I think that's mainly what you were describing, right, Scott?
Commissioner Marchant?
What are the landscaping requirements? Are they required to have a certain number of shrubs and trees? Is there a certain percentage that needs to be met? And would this impact it?
Yes, yes, and yes. But yeah, so their total landscaping, they need 10% of the site. They need a certain number of trees per parking stalls to shade the parking lot. They need a certain number of trees per street frontage, per landscaping area. So, yeah.
And staff will review all of that with them administratively and make sure that they're meeting all of that.
Yes.
Commissioner Quinney?
All right, Duncan, just as a follow-up to what you just said, are you suggesting we should just handle the public hearing today, get that taken care of, and then send this back for an updated plan and just handle this as a business item next time? Or do you think we can just provide enough direction so that Mark can go back and just take care of this on his own?
I think either is a legal option that you have available to you. The first that you just described is preferable to bring it back as a business item, but
Okay.
either way, it's an option for you to.
I hate making them wait, but I think if we have one that's that's preferable, I think that's where we should go.
And
Maybe
then
we should have a public hearing really quick.
we will. I got one quick question for the fire department. Is that going to affect any access and or access to the building and or parking lot?
Well, I
I know,
being somewhat blind, I've been trying to see what on the west side, what's the space there? Is that 20 feet? Is that 10?
Are you,
10 feet?
oh,
Okay.
between the building and the property line? Yeah, that's
Yeah, from the
10.
building to the
Yeah,
property,
yeah, it goes right to the easement
10 feet. And then we got 20 on the top, right, or on the north side.
on the jog, yeah.
Okay. From our perspective, I'm going to make the owner very happy. I would recommend that if we're going to store the trailer, to store it on the north side. First of all, there's a gate already there. The gate's purpose is for us to be able to access up the backside of the building from 40th West in order to meet the requirement of reaching the entire of the building within 150 feet of a paved access road. If we put it on the west side, that makes access a little more difficult because now we only have 2 or 3 feet to try to haul hose and get air packs and stuff up that side. So from my perspective, I'm okay with putting it on the west side or the north side, as it's going to be gone here and there. Plus we have more room to be able to maneuver around the trailer and access up that side. The only other option would be is to put fire sprinklers in it. I would make that as a suggestion, but from our perspective, I think we can work around and satisfy the owner's requirements and still meet the fire code with this.
okay, thank you.
Chair, if I could, I'd appreciate the fire department's input. The danger we have, and we're sort of approaching that line, since we have been thrown a curveball at tonight. It's dangerous to make a decision in a vacuum. We don't have any engineering staff, and pulling or backing a 14-foot trailer off of 40th, they may have a concern. So it would be good to get their thoughts if indeed we are going that direction, to put it on the north side of the building.
And my preference would be, let's hold the public hearing. I just wanted to get a little bit of input because I do know with the setbacks and from personal experience, dragging hose and all of that stuff, that was one of the concerns that came to my head. And I just want to make sure that that's addressed tonight. And then, of course, it's still going to have the final approval, and we don't violate any of the codes, city codes or anything like that. So
One other follow-up for you, Mark. If this were parked on the north side of as proposed here, would that change the height of the wall that needs to be back there and the trees? Or are we sufficiently screened, being sensitive to the fact that we've got a 2-story home behind this?
That would be another problem because our ordinances, if we're parking a trailer back there, it kind of comes back to that question of, is this outdoor storage or is this parking? And I would argue that this is outdoor storage in that area, since it's really not in a designated parking area. I mean, it's in a landscape buffer. So there's also the issue with, if it is outdoor storage, then it kind of triggers some other requirements, which we don't allow anything to be, anything within 20 feet of that wall to be taller than the wall. So it would just violate that ordinance outright.
Okay. Let's do the public hearing.
okay. I don't see any other questions, so we'll go ahead and open up for public hearing. Again, if you're here to speak on it, you'll have 3 minutes. Just state your name. And if you're on Zoom, just raise your hand.
Jordan Smith. I'm not a traffic engineer. I know a little bit about traffic though. 4,000 West does not have any shoulder. Backing a trailer in there would not be a good idea and would not be preferred. It would block up the whole road as you're backing and pulling that trailer out.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back up to the commission. Commissioner Quinney?
I just thought of something else as I was looking at this plan. If I'm not mistaken, across the street from the north access there is another street, isn't it? Isn't that access into the other neighborhood over there? Yeah, so just one more thing, just creating another pinch point for parking a trailer there. All right, unless anybody has anything else that they want to add, I just want to go ahead and make a motion that we send this back to Mark. You beat me down.
I wrote up a motion, but I'm fine with sending it back to Mark.
No, I think we should have Mark finish this. I think our recommendation from legal was that it's best procedure, so.
Well, do we want to approve it with the condition that they work with staff and come back as a business item? Because I think that's what Mark was saying.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna work on.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so I think we're gonna have to make a motion here to table this. Mark, is 2 weeks enough?
Yeah, can we give you one more option?
I'm okay with that. Chair, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. Can we suspend?
Yeah, I move that we suspend
You make the motion to suspend the rules?
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay,
So Chris Abraham, I'm the third in the trio here. Can we just table the trailer at this point and we don't need to store it on the property? We'll store it elsewhere indefinitely. And we'll just skip the whole thing and submit it as it is.
Will it actually be stored somewhere else?
Yes, it will.
Okay.
well, then that eliminates that whole,
I'm fine with that.
then I think that eliminates all of the discussion that we've had.
I mean, our concern is that we're at capacity in the space we're in, and we're fighting a 1.5-year build because of supply chain issues. I'd rather find a place to store a trailer than have to wait. No offense to you guys, it's just a lot of waiting. So we're ready to move when we can.
If you're willing to do that, then we can go ahead and move forward. Okay. Commissioner Quinney.
So my question would be is then are they moving forward with the site plan and as currently constituted in the staff report?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And with this motion, they're not gonna come back to you, to make the changes later that we've gone back and forth on, right?
If I could, the applicant or any property owner has the right to come at any other future point in time and work within the parameters of the code. If it's not changing the site plan substantially, we have the authority and discretion to make those changes.
I'm fine with that. Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Quinney.
Based on the information and findings set forth in the staff report and upon the evidence and explanations received today, I move that the planning commission approve the preliminary site plan and the street facing bay doors for Eagle Eye Promotions located at 4022 West, 8380 South in the M1 zone with the conditions and requirements of approval listed on page 2 of the staff report.
Commissioner Marchant.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it gets carried 7-0. And that is the last item on our agenda. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. We are adjourned. Thanks, Commissioner Allen.
Real quick, commissioners, thank you for allowing us to be efficient. And I know we had a long discussion, but both, if you notice, both applications on your agenda tonight, both applications